Next witness. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Alan Rowe. To absence Assembly Member Bonta, Senator Pan, and to Assembly Member Sawyer and others on the panel. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning on this very important topic. I'm a retired state employee who worked for 37 years. Assembly Member Sawyer, I remember taking the test, having an interview, and being on a job 2 days later. I don't know how it happened. In 1969, it was different. But that was in 1969. It was in 107 South Broadway. I worked for the Department of Social Services on my way up to be actually assistant to Health and Human Services Agency Secretary Granlin Johnson during the early 2000s. But during my tenure as a state worker, senator and assembly and panel members, me and my wife formed a nonprofit organization called UCAN, United College Action Network, or UCAN Go to College, in which for the last 27 years, our organization has served over 75,000 young people in the state of California, mostly in Sacramento, and we are proud to have placed 20,000 of those into college, primarily historically black colleges and primarily African-American students, and historically black colleges throughout the South and East. When the Civil Rights Coalition asked me to be a part of this important hearing, I immediately recognized that the focus on why EEO matters correctly addresses the critical linkage between employment, family stability, and the prosperity of a community and the education of our children. My wife and I have dedicated 27 years of our lives to helping young men and women realize their academic and their dreams and their potential. The principle of equal opportunity is a core value that has been ever present in their work and life's work. At the end of an academic journey, it is critical when students get a degree that these young college graduates find meaningful work. I submit to you that employment within the state of California is a suitable end to that journey, especially for the kids that we work with that come from our region and from your particular district, and from actually we service all over the state, but primarily this is my home, this is where I grew up, I can tell you more about Sacramento than most people, but except for my dear friend. Through state employment, these young men and women are provided opportunity to pursue meaningful careers, further develop their talents and skills, and apply them in a benefit to the state of California for the citizens and pay taxes. I commend this committee for your commitment to the principles of equal employment opportunity. I like to call it growing your own. That's what we like to do. But it's tough when young people come back here in the summer. Right now they're here. They can't find anywhere because there's no jobs, no internships in the state. They don't have any opportunities. But we're going to change that because I see an eager and willing committee, and we see people here in the audience that are willing and ready to work with you. The Black Advocates in State Services has shared with me the concern, and by the way, I was a member for 25 or more years, that although African Americans currently make up about 10% of the California state workforce, the majority of them are baby boomers primarily, and preliminary statistics indicate, analysis indicates that there will be a retirement cliff that may result in African American state worker participation dropping to as low as 2% over the next several years if state departments fail to make a sincere and serious commitment to diversity and equal employment opportunity in state hiring practices. When equal employment opportunity doors are closed, the cycle of prosperity will be broken in communities across California. There's a ripple effect of community ills. As we know, poverty, blighted communities and neighborhoods, gang and drug activities impacting our generations, and I see those types as well. I see those that are going to college, and I work with those that have lost hope, and we try to turn them around. One story is a young lady who actually 4 years ago was in foster care, and she had called the community. What do you call the people when you're mistreated? Human. What is it? When people the family services. So Child Protective Services, thank you, on her own mother and father because she was mistreated. She was placed in foster homes at the time she was in ninth grade and her grades dropped. And by the time she was ready to graduate, she was in alternative school. But she heard about UCAN and our program. And even though she was in alternative school, we came in our office. We got her into college. She is now, and she wants to be a nurse. She is now a junior in Florida, and she will be graduating and be coming back here looking for a nursing job in our community. The state needs a new EEO formula because EEO must be woven into the fabric of the state of California's management and hiring system. And in my closing, in order for the principles of EEO to be effective, departments must be held to an EEO framework of accountability. 37 years, I've seen it all. I've seen a whole lot of, matter of fact, Governor Reagan was a governor who became president when I first started. That's a side note. And it cannot be an afterthought of the treated superficially with political correct words or tokenism. As John Ortiz said in an article this morning, we're at a crossroads. I recommend that the state develop college intern programs with historically black colleges and universities, something we can be very helpful in and linking you with, because we know the right people in those institutions who are looking to place their graduates in places where they're going to have quality jobs and be able to give back and make a difference. I also think it's important that the state implement a proactive recruitment and hiring program through hiring fairs, that the State Department be required to develop and be held accountable to a diversity plan. Not just talk, but action. And that the state start with the coalition to develop a recruitment and an outreach network, which would include working with agencies like UCAN, where we can effectively take that mantle and take your charge that you give to those agencies and those departments, the task of us fulfilling our need, because we're going to have, and we already have the majority minority, and we have to deal with our workforce to meet that. I want to again thank you. I want to thank the staff and BASS and the coalition for their leadership in this vital issue, and I appreciate your valuable time and your commitment to helping to make this better. And I do appreciate 9 years of getting a check every month as a retiree from the state of California, whether it's raining or shining, it comes. So the state retirement system works.
Okay, thank you. So I have to admit that, Mr. Land, they gave you 30 seconds, but I'll give you a little more time for your presentation.
Very good. Chairs and members, I'm Dean Land. I'm speaking on behalf of the Civil Rights Coalition. You heard from Ms. Tovar and Dr. Rowe about the impact of having a multicultural, multilingual workforce. State civil service must reflect the services, must reflect the people it serves. It is good government. Achieving equal employment opportunity does require strong commitment, leadership, and creativity to change the state's status quo. And what's been emphasized repeatedly is that it does require accountability, and compliance is really important. I think that the administration's needed work goes on over the next 2.5 years. People of color and people with disabilities and other disadvantaged communities should not be asked to wait 2.5 years to receive equal treatment. In conclusion, I wanted to thank, on behalf of the coalition, Secretary Batcher and Director Gillingham for meeting with the coalition on some of these critical issues. Some progress has been made, but much work needs to be done, particularly in terms of a systematic approach using metrics to ensure accountability and also enforcing current statutes. We're not asking for any new legislation. We're just asking for compliance of current statutes. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. Questions from members? Joan Sawyer.
Hi. And I do remember Ms. Tovar from the city of L.A. It's good to see you again. And you and each of you have mentioned things about either the administration or general manager or people who are employed following the regulations that are already in place. I think it goes a little bit more than that. For example, with the UC, right now, their enrollment rate of African Americans is at 4%, but they will tell you they spend millions and millions of dollars in recruitment. And they may go to the historically black colleges or places to try to get people to come into UC system, but it's not working. And I think it's because of this word called affirmative action. JFK in Executive Order 10925 in 61, he wanted that he ordered that government contractors take affirmative action to ensure applicants are employed, employees are treated fairly during employment with regard to their race, creed, color, or natural order. It was used to promote actions that achieve non-discrimination. You have to be proactive to get this done. And if you don't put people in place that are proactive to do it, even though you have all the programs, all the outreach, everything is there, but if there's no will to get it done from the top to the people who actually make the employment recommendations, I think that's where we're falling short on. The reason we created affirmative action programs is because to help those who were not socially conscious or EEO challenged get to those numbers in a substantive way. And you working in state government, and do you feel that if we were to have more people at the top who had more of an affirmative action, not background, but at least were willing to look at it? Because in L.A. we have things called the rule of 3 whole scores.
Right.
And the reason that was put in is because I may have a 91 on a test, the next person will have a 90. I'm sorry, I'll have the top person have a 91, next person have a 90, I'll have 89. That was used to make sure as an African American I was locked out. So Mayor Bradley created the rule of 3 whole scores so you could go down to that third person. Because what's the difference between a score of 91, 80, and 89? And so that hopefully increased the number of minorities that were able to get employed in the city of L.A. I don't think you have anything like that here. And with Prop 209, you probably couldn't do anything like that. But at least we should have something in place that gives managers an opportunity who have that notion that we need to get the best qualified, but people with a diverse background to move down. So my question is, you think something like that would be helpful? Because all the programs in the world you have, but if you don't have the will to do it, it could be very problematic.
If I may, I think you hit on the issue. The issue is the will, the commitment to do it. We use the word affirmative action, and that gets everybody all shook up and everything.
Not me.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't even think we need to use that word, because I think there's creative ways in which you can, within the law, still do that outreach to the underrepresented groups, and we've done it before. It's just that we need to have the will to really do it. Some of us have pushed it, and therefore it has gone down because we wanted to ensure that that did happen. Okay? You can do area recruitment where there is underrepresentation. That is one easy way of doing it, but there's multiple ways that we have done it in the past. But again, it's who is running the show. Okay? And I'll give you one quick example. Ages ago, the head of the affirmative action program in one state, I'll say it, Highway Patrol, was against affirmative action, and that person was put in charge of affirmative action. Okay? So nothing happened. So we had to make sure we made a change there. You know? So it's the who is at the top. And right now, I didn't even mention it, but there's underrepresentation of minorities in management position. That is another beginning of which you can look at who's implementing it. Okay? If they don't have the will, if they don't have the interest, or they may be against it, which I encountered that during my service, that can derail the best of plans. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? I just have a brief question in regards to, because Dr. Noble, I think you made, so Dr. Rowe, I think you made a remark about how we have, particularly the African-American civil servants, that many of them are retiring, and then that we're going to have a drop in diversity. Is that because there was a recruitment period that happened during a period of time that now has fallen off, and so we're not, so the younger civil servants and who are recruiting is not we're not able to keep up with what we've been able to do before? Or so I just wanted to clarify that statement.
Sure. The cliff is one because of the baby boomers, those that are my age and others. So a lot of us were hired during that time when there was an aggressive push to ensure that we diversified, and so now and we'll have some additional information through BASS and the coalition to help to verify and understand the full impact of that. But a lot of it has to do with the aging workforce of people of color.
Okay, but I think I'm also concerned that so there's going to be the people who are in the civil service who are retiring, but I'm also wondering, are the people we're recruiting right now, are they actually less or diverse than when the folks who are now retiring, when they were being recruited? Are we actually going backwards in our diversity of our recruitment?
Well, I think that as we look at the statistics that Assemblymember Jones Sawyer requested from the LAO office, we can see some of that, and we'll provide some of that to you and to the committee. I think the coalition sees that there is a significant concern in that area, but we'll get that data and provide that to you at a later date because. If we're not hiring the people of color or we're not hiring the people with disability, then we're going to have a problem no matter what happens. So, that's something we'll provide additional information for you.
Dr. Pan, to answer your question, I think previously there was a very vigorous focused recruitment campaign on behalf of state government. When 209 passed, unfortunately, many state departments interpreted that as a blanket prohibition in terms of being able to recruit. As we heard earlier this morning, 209 prohibits quotas. The state has never had quotas. The courts implement quotas. And so state government has really lessened in terms of targeting and focusing in terms of having a very broad-based recruitment process.
And therefore, we have less percentage of those of color, of all colors in as a result.
Thank you. So it sounds like there's much work to do. Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Assemblymember Waldron.
Thank you. Senator Pan brought up a good point, and I was just wondering, from my tenure here in the Assembly, I can see that the state, just the whole operation, seems to be a little bit behind as far as new technology and new approaches to doing things. And I'm wondering because, as was said, older folks are going to be retiring, and you can see that numbers. How does the state advertise when there's job openings? Are they still doing it the same old way? I mean, we know young people, they're always on their device. They're tweeting, they're Instagram, they're doing all of these things. How can we get that information the way they're communicating into the underserved communities so that they can know there's availability? And the other thing, I have a school-aged son who's now going into high school. How even high school is where everyone's trying to say, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? They don't know. They don't have access to all the opportunities. And how do we get that information to the young people? Because if they don't know what's available, they'll never know what they can strive for.
I can answer the second part of that question in terms of if we collaborate with the coalition and with the agencies and departments that are really serious about outreach, then there will be a pipeline of interns available, graduates that are coming home that want to come home, and many times they stay where they're going to college because they realize there's not much opportunity. Whether the state is not doing a good job of advertising or they're not up with the latest technology of getting in on, if not just Facebook and Instagram or whatever they're doing, there has to be another way of doing that. But through agencies like ours, our organization, we can provide a linkage for those high school kids. We do that all the time because they say, well, what's going to happen when I finish? And so we have to ensure that there is also opportunities then for employment.
Just comment on both of those issues. One is that I think we need to do more outreach in terms of the media, that these multilingual, radio stations or television, that used to be done, but now it isn't being done. And that would be right directly going into the community, to that candidate, to that potential applicant. Dealing with the issue of your son, he's no different than many, many other children who, and they're now teenagers. They don't like to be called children. Okay, Stand corrected.
That's right.
But one of the problems, and this is one that all of you, I think, can play a very key role, we do not have in our schools, some of them don't have counselors. I can't think about it. Who is the best guide within the system, in that school, to help that young man, young woman know what is available to them? I've gone to schools in which there were no counselors. And then added to that, there's some counselors that don't understand the multilingual, multicultural of that child. Again, that young man or that woman. So you can play a role and look into that, because we've been advocating how can that young man or young woman know what is available to them if there's no one there to counsel them. So it's very important.
Yeah.
Thank you, Assemblymember Waldron. That's a very important and relevant question, and I thank the presenters on this panel for their responses to it. I know that it's also a very good segue to our next panel, because at least one of our presenters in our next panel will be specifically addressing that issue as well. So I want to thank and excuse our current presenters and panelists. Thank you, and invite up our next panel, which will talk about the topic of an update on civil service improvement. And it includes Mary Bell Badger, Secretary, Government Operations Agency, Richard Gillihan, Director, Department of Human Resources, and Yvonne Walker, President, SEIU Local 1000. And I also want to wish Ms. Walker a very happy birthday, as today is her birthday.